You're listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NACS. We'll talk about what we see at stores and what the future may hold for our industry.
For our last episode of the year, we thought we would rerun our most popular episode of the year. And of course, it relates to our number one issue of the year, labor. Take a listen. We're going to have a conversation today about how you can coach up those managers to get those great people to come to your store and to stay at your store. Joining us today is Annie Gauthier. She is CFO, co-CEO of St. Romain Oil Company, also known as Why Not Stop Stores, based in Louisiana. So thanks for joining us today, Annie.
Thanks, Jeff. Happy to be here. Thanks.
So one of the things that you've really focused on in your store operations, among other things, is the store manager. The store manager is the way to really look at how do you achieve productivity with labor and get and keep people. Can you talk about, well, first off, give us an overview about your stores, and then we'll dive into how the store managers fit in there.
Yeah, sure. We operate a 14-store chain all based in central Louisiana. We've been running stores since 87. When my brothers and I took the business over 6 years ago from our parents, we had 9 stores. So we've grown a lot in the past 6 years, and we've learned a lot. Not all of that on purpose, a lot of it by trial and error, emphasis on the error. But we've really been focused on trying to learn from that and grow from that, particularly with our store managers and our district managers.
See, you set up these transitions better than me, so take it away. How have you really learned to focus on store managers to a greater degree than when you first started?
I think for me, something that stands out actually from a NACS HR forum years and years ago, 2007, 8, 9, was Terry McKenna standing in front of us all saying, people join companies and they quit managers. I'd never heard that before. It was early in my HR career at that point, and it's really stuck with me, and I've watched it over the years. And of course, we hit this pandemic in 2020. The whole world kind of goes sideways. Labor market is, of course, one of the things affected by that. And we start seeing different things in our stores. We've always been a company that tries to learn from our frontline, from our managers. We don't think we have all the answers figured out, so we're always having conversations with them, regular meetings. That was obviously challenged, how we did that during the pandemic and in the aftermath. But we got our managers together and we're talking about what's going on. And we were hearing over and over again that, well, people just don't want to work these days. Nobody wants to work. There's all this free money. Nobody wants to work. People want to work, but they're scared to come to work. So these different dynamics going on. We're seeing disruption to our application cycles. I'm a data junkie, an amateur data junkie. And so I'm trying to watch the numbers and see and try to understand what's going on. What can we learn? What can we do? And I'm buying into some of the narrative that it's just, okay, fine. When the stimulus money and the unemployment subsidies run through, we'll get back to something like a new normal, I hope. And then I see data coming out saying that our unemployment, our labor workforce in our market is actually got more people in it than we did prior to the pandemic. So they're not, all these people that we're waiting for aren't necessarily sitting home. The unemployment numbers are coming back down. We don't have enough people for all the job openings, enough people on unemployment for all the job openings. So we can't just wait for them to come back. We've got to do things. We start having those conversations with our managers who start then throwing out other solutions as to why the problem is something out there. So we surveyed all our managers and said, well, what do you think is going on? We've got all these different scenarios. Well, it's the bigger stores. They have it easier. The smaller stores, they have it easier. The urban stores, the rural stores, the newer stores, the older stores, all these other external factors explain it. The managers who've been there longer, the managers who are newer. So we crunched as much data as we could. And what we found was that there was absolutely no correlation in our small sample set to any of that. What seemed to affect whether we had staff and whether we had turnover at our stores was how engaged the team members at those sites rated that their managers were. So we rank ordered our sites, shared that data back out with them. And I said, if you're at the bottom of this list, I'm not calling you out. And this is not name and shame. That's not how we run our company. I hope that this is offers you hope that you can do this, because what we're not seeing is that all of our stores are performing the same. They're not. We've got store managers who are winning. Their stores are pretty fully staffed. They're not having a lot of turnover. Their retention is high. They're in the same markets and sometimes just right down the road from the others of you. They're pulling from the same people, the same applicants. We're seeing similar customers. There's nothing that seems to make a difference other than how engaged the manager is. And so I'd had conversations with a couple of managers before some workshops that we were putting on, and how's things going? They were in a tougher labor market for us. How's things going? Oh, there's no point. They were so discouraged. There's no point just trying to train these people. They all just come and they go. It's like, so what are you doing about that? There's like, there's nothing you can do. So we just watch them come and go. I said, you think it's possible that they might be coming and going because you're not doing anything with them? You're just watching them come and go? And it stopped one of them in her tracks. And she's like, I don't know. I've kind of just given up on people. I bought it. She didn't say she'd bought into the narrative that people just don't want to work anymore, but that's what she got to. So we formed a retention focus group with the managers, the 5 managers who were ranked lowest on our employee retention list, and started getting together with them weekly on Zoom calls with our district managers and our HR manager and myself and my brother and business partner who runs our operations. And we just started focusing on who's leaving and why did they leave? And was it a surprise that they left? And what could we learn from the fact that they left? Were there any red flags when you interviewed them that panned out as they progressed through their employment? What about your new people who just started? How are they doing? What's going on with them? Any red flags that you're seeing with them? What about the rest of your team? Is there anybody that it wouldn't surprise you if they weren't at work tomorrow or next week or next month? If so, why? What's going on with them? What conversations are you having with them about that? And then just what else are you struggling with? Mm-hmm. And we saw that as our managers opened up gradually with each other and with us, that they started to change what they did. They started to change what their focus was on. They started to believe, I think, in the power of their agency and their store to make a difference. And they started to do different things. And the simplest thing they did was they just started talking to their employees more about what was going on with their employees and believing that that would make a difference and seeing that it did. And so then they got into, I guess, a virtuous cycle.
I like that you looked at the data, and the data doesn't lie, right? That trumps your gut feeling every single time. But then, getting into the stores and actually talking to the managers, I mean, that had to have been, disheartening for you to hear that they didn't feel, empowered, that they just felt stuck, like, if these people don't care, why should I care? So it's almost like you had to get them back to caring and get them to a place of empower, not only themselves, but empowering the people who were working for them or with them.
Yeah. And I just want to be clear, the managers I was talking to, I think personally cared very much. They cared about their jobs, about their stores, about their bought-in team members.
It's probably the trifecta of the pandemic and everything else going on that just kind of,
They were just resigned, they were resigned to bearing this extra heavy load and just seemed to assume that they need to, rather than engaging their newer team members and kind of bringing them into the fold and helping share that workload. So.
And is it also, human nature is when you're given an assignment, you're given a leadership. It's kind of goes back to the Peter principle, where you get promoted to the level of your incompetence. It's a terrible choice of words there, but where somebody may be in a position and they want to do it, they just don't know how to do it. And your conversations are more about how to do it, as you said, than the blame and shame.
Absolutely. There's something I've heard a lot from a podcaster I listen to, and he talks about adults need to be reminded more than they need to be instructed. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that we've seen play out with our retention focus groups. They're still ongoing. We update the list of who's in that group quarterly. So we're in our 3rd iteration of that now. But I think what we see is that the managers remind themselves and each other of what works and what doesn't work, or just re-energize themselves a lot of times, because it can be challenging. And we still have, pockets of illness that pop up, or somebody's out and then they are short-staffed, because even though everybody's doing the right things and is bought in and is on the same team, you can't help it if your gallbladder goes bad or you get COVID and have complications and are out for a while. So we've still got to power through, even if all the things are going well. So yeah, I think they're able to remind each other and get new inspiration.
I would imagine that, in a normal dynamic, when you have 14 different store managers, friendly competition, if you will, everybody wants to do better. But then when more of them are talking and they're sharing and they're helping, they're probably talking to each other more outside of the formal conversations. And it's like, hey, I just tried this, or I have a problem. And so are any of those things, the unanticipated positives out of this program, are any manifesting themselves worth sharing?
I don't know that I have any specific anecdotes to speak to, but I can confirm that yes, it's absolutely, the friendly competition's always been there, especially with that small of a group of managers. I think it's changed the focus for our other managers, even that aren't in the retention focus group, though. I think because our district managers are engaging with our people and with the idea of our people and what we can do about our people differently. I think we're probably more proactive than we've ever been. And that's not a criticism of any of our managers or district managers, but it's a breathe new life, I think, into everybody's focus. And we gave our retention focus group the option to vote to move to a biweekly call instead of weekly, thinking, well, maybe it was overkill, maybe it needed to be freshened up. They voted initially. 4 of them wanted to move it to biweekly, and one of them said, the one I really thought was going to want to say, yeah, this is for the birds. I'm good. She had really moved the needle a lot. But she says, I think I moved the needle because we're doing this weekly. I think we need to keep doing it weekly. And I said, well, let's table that. We're going to skip next week because it was a holiday. We'll come back to it and see what everybody thinks. And in 2 weeks, all 5 of them unanimously said, we need to keep doing this weekly. And when we refreshed the group for the first quarter, with the new 5 managers, what I saw this past week was that one of the managers who was in it for the first 2 quarters asked if he could stay on and participate with us, because he just wanted to kind of get that booster shot of inspiration and idea. He was feeling like he was having a struggle. So there's definitely more collaboration and valuing of that sharing that happens on the call. And then, they were sharing tips and reaching out outside of the call as well.
So Annie, now that it's in place, right? Like, you've got everybody on the same page for the most part, and you start to see the progress that's being made, and you start to see, that things are changing and turning around a little bit. What are the measures of success for you guys?
Yeah, so we've really been focused on 90-day retention and 90-day turnover, and there seem to be a few different ways to measure that float around. So for us, 90-day retention is what percentage of our team has been with us at least 90 days. And we're actually moving to a focus more on what I'm calling our 90-day roster fill percentage, because what we saw was some managers, as they got focused on getting that percentage up, you can make that percentage go up by not rehiring when you lose people. And that's certainly not the goal. We don't want 100% of half of our positions filled with people who've been with us more than 90 days.
Right.
But we're watching that metric, which has improved. Overall, we've moved it 10 percentage points in 6 months. And we've had one of our managers move from about 35% to 80% in 4 months of her team. She was one of the ones who was the most discouraged. And then our 90-day turnover. So for us, that means how many people have we lost in the past 90 days? That's a rolling 90-day lag measure. So we've seen that drop down to the lowest rate it's been in the past 2 years.
And there is a difference between turnover and retention. And, turnover is, I think, the traditional measure that a lot of folks in our industry look at. But retention is really probably emerging more as the key metric to look at.
Yeah, I think so, and we've seen it over the years. And I've been having these conversations with people for the past several in benchmarking groups. I've had stores that had the same turnover, but one is a high retention store and the other isn't. They're not necessarily an automatic inverse of each other. There's typically inverse correlation between them, but you can have a store that's high retention that just kind of has a very solid core with a small revolving door. Maybe they're having a hard time finding a maintenance person or something like that. And so that position keeps revolving, but everybody else is there and they're solid. That's a totally different customer experience. That's a totally different work experience than a store where you've got the same turnover but a much lower retention rate. So we do look at both. We've looked at both for 15 years. And I'd love to see us continue to have better benchmarking on the retention side, more consistency around how we measure retention and the ability to know whether we're winning or not in that metric. So,
do you think there's some advantages to being on the smaller side, right? You have 13 stores versus like 300.
Yeah, so I don't know what it looks like to operate at that scale. I think that there are some challenges that are universal, but I think there are some, and certainly there's opportunities on both sides of the spectrum. When we were smaller, when I came to work with our company 17 years ago, we had 70 employees at 7 stores. I could drive to any one of them within 15, 20 minutes. And I knew everybody by first name. Now we have, if we're fully staffed, we'd have 350 people working with us, and our geography is still pretty tight, but now the furthest store is a little over an hour. It would be hard to go see everybody all at once. We can't fit everybody in the same room at the same time as easily as we used to. So it's different. But we do still have the ability to interact on a very personal level with our managers as owners of the company, and that seems to be valued, at least in our little local part of the world. So.
So you had mentioned getting everybody in the same room,
Yes.
But one of the things, and that leads to something else that you do, where you have all hands on deck meetings and a mini trade show. It's NAC show, watch out.
Yeah.
But can you talk about bringing everybody together and also having this mini trade show, how it also can help with instilling the messages you want everybody to know?
Yeah, sure. So it's been an evolution. We used to call it our all-team meeting. We used to do it twice a year in our local firehouse and get everybody in 2 sessions. We'd do it 2 days back to back. The second day never had as much energy, and initially there were no vendors. Sometimes we'd have a guest speaker. It's evolved to where we are today. We haven't done it in 3 years, so we said we were going to do it every other year. The last time we did it was February 13th of 2020. For obvious reasons, it didn't happen the next couple. But when we do it in March of 2023, we now do it all in one day. And because we're doing it all in one day, we bring in our key vendors, and they get set up in the morning, and then at 9 o'clock, we'll have half of our team come through. They'll be there for a couple of hours. We have a little 30-minute or so presentation. We'll kind of update company messaging. Here's where we've been. Here's where we're going. And then we release them to go around and visit with our vendors, find out what's new, sample things. It is like a mini NAC show, very many. But we have, I think, 35 vendors or so at our last one. And then people go away. Our store managers stay the whole day. So they're there to get some one-on-one time, kind of think top-to-top meetings with those vendors in between. And then we bring in the other half of our team that afternoon from 2 to 4 and repeat the whole performance. We were seem to be able to maintain the energy level by doing it all in one day. Obviously, this isn't an idea that scales totally for everybody, but it works for us. So it's been a lot of fun. It's really well received by our team members and our vendors as well. They were begging us to have it last year. We were just trying to get back to normal. So we're really excited to do that this March. And our Net Promoter Scores, we survey our teams at least twice a year, and our Net Promoter Scores are always at their highest in the weeks following this event. So it injects a lot of energy and a lot of clarity for our team members. So we hope to get back to doing it more frequently than every 3 years.
That's pretty cool that you do. You use Net Promoter to actually gauge, how well it is, how well received it is too.
Yeah. And we gauge both the event, which scores, it's think our most recent Net Promoter Score was an 86, so pretty strong there. And the company performance as well, like how likely are you to recommend this company to a friend or family member, correlates pretty closely to the event Net Promoter Score. So again, data junkie. So.
Well, speaking of events, do you bring managers to the next show?
It's been years since we've brought managers to the next show. We've brought our district managers. We have one who just went for the first time. No, who's going for the first time this year. So it's always eye-opening to bring anybody. But we have, now that it's, with it being in Atlanta this year and that being a very easy logistical opportunity for us, we're looking at how we can better engage with our managers and doing some different rewards things to bring managers to the next show and other events.
Yeah, just a data junkie. Going back to your Net Promoter scores. For those not familiar with Net Promoter, if you score above a 70, then you're considered like Apple. That if you get above a 70, you're awesome. So to get that Net Promoter score, and that is the number of the percentage of people who rate you a 9 or 10 on a 10-point scale, minus those that give you 6 or below. And 7s and 8s count as nothing. So that's a phenomenal score. Yeah. And it's not the snacks. It's really, I would imagine, the connection. Snacks are awesome, and hearing the story behind the snacks and all these new things, but it's probably the feeling of belonging. And that's really what your team meetings do, what your store manager calls do. It's a feeling of belonging, which I think everyone's looking to get today.
I don't know who to attribute this to, but I believe that it's true that contact breeds connection and connection breeds commitment. And so that underlies how we frame up our engagement with our team members. We try to just showing up is half the battle. So, and engaging with the people.
Want to talk about one other thing related to just what you've done with getting people to come to work every day, and you have perfect attendance, which you reward that, which, when somebody's thinking, hey, maybe I could call out today, pretty common in a lot of places today. That may incent somebody to say, hey, I'm going to come in, not only because I'd be letting down my teammates if I didn't come in, but there's also a bonus in it for me. So can you talk about that program as well?
Yeah, sure. We have tracked attendance points where you get points for not showing up for work for the past 4.5 years. And I don't like having sticks without having carrots. So a few years ago, we started the perfect attendance bonus, and we award that to anybody who has no points for a calendar quarter. If you do, whether you just started with us or you've been with us for 40 years, if you have no points, you're eligible for the bonus, and it's calculated as 50 cents for every hour you worked. So it's a 50 cent an hour bonus. And then it has a sweetener. If you get perfect attendance for all 4 quarters in the year, you have to, for that one, you do have to have been employed in all 4 quarters. You could have started on March 30th or 31st. It's fine. But if you worked in all 4 quarters and had no points in any of those quarters, then we add another 50 cents on top of that. So if you show up for all your scheduled shifts, you can walk away with an extra $2,000 to $2,500, depending on how many hours a year you're working. And it's been really well received. Actually, over the Christmas break, ran into one of our store managers at Walmart, and she stopped me in the produce section and says, "Did you hear?" I was like, "Did I hear what?" And she says, "I got perfect attendance." I guess it was January 1st or December 31st. I was at home. She says, "I got it. There were a couple of days, even when that bad weather came, I was like, oh no, I'm getting up. I'm getting there early enough. I'm not missing that perfect attendance." She got it for the whole year. So she was.
Good for her.
I said, "Well, good for you. Congratulations. What you going to do with that money?" She says, "It's not about the money. It was just the personal challenge to do it too. But I mean, I'm sure I'll spend the money on my kids, but I did it. I said I was going to do it, and I did it." So it was interesting to me that it's a personal goal and growth tool as well as a monetary incentive. So
awesome.
Yeah, it's making things fun.
Well,
now,
Annie, we are Oh, Jeff wants to keep going. I was going to say we're out of time, but Jeff, you can keep going. Go ahead.
Promise. Last thing has nothing to do with labor. Has to do with why not stop going viral with the Buffalo Bills. As I said, nothing to do with labor, but the Buffalo Bills had a video that came out talking about, I guess the question that somebody asked them is, what's your favorite thing you like to get at a gas station? And one of the Bills singled out your stores.
Yeah, Ed Oliver is from this area where we're based, and so he called out our fish. And I love the guy behind him who's like, "From a gas station?" And another player from the South was like, "Dude, you don't have gas stations like we do." But yeah, so that was a fun little call out, and we'll see. We have no plans to, franchise into Buffalo anytime soon. It's a little bit
Louisiana, Buffalo.
Yeah, it's different markets.
Yeah, it can make your drive a little long.
Yeah, exactly. So we're having a hard time getting a district manager for that area. So.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the video's posted on your Facebook page if anybody wants to see it. It's just kind of a cool shout out, and you never know when you go virtual. Virtual. What did I just say?
Yeah, no.
Viral.
Yeah.
Virtual is
viral.
Yes.
The good kind of viral. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, Annie, it is a pleasure talking to you and for sharing the insights on how you're engaging your store managers. And, love to hear the tips keep coming. So if you have more, hopefully we can connect later on. And thank you for joining us on Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.